Okay, look. I realize that Wednesday, and on occasion Thursday, is usually when I talk about new shows or new movies on Netflix, and usually I just tackle whatever, sometimes it's the most popular thing on Netflix right then and there. Sometimes it's a fairly obscure movie that maybe was popular at one point but then dropped down the rankings, or maybe it never made the rankings and I felt like it was worth talking about, but all the same, this is usually my Netflix day. However, there is a certain movie on Netflix right now made by a certain Zack Snyder that I've just been dreading since day one. I'm just gonna come clean. I'm done with Zack Snyder for a while. Like, not knocking anything he made prior to his work in the DCU, like, I'm sure a lot of that is fine still, but stuff with the DCU has just been absolutely terrible. I hated Man of Steel, I hated Batman vs. Superman, I hated the Justice League both times, and yes, that does include the 4-hour-long Snyder Cut that we've all been demanding, because somehow the fact that it's 4 hours long is going to mean it's instantly better. I think the Snyderverse needs to stay buried and forgotten. I'm just done. And I'm afraid that that mindset is going to bleed into whatever movie he makes next, which in this case is Army of the Dead. I just don't want to be that guy, I don't want to be the guy who pisses on something just because it was made by dirt-to-dirt. Like, it's one of the reasons I generally try to avoid Tarsum Singh movies whenever I see them on Pluto TV, but all the same, I'm a YouTuber, and it is my job to talk about what's popular, so I decided to do a poll. And in that poll I said, do you want me to watch Army of the Dead? Do you want me to swallow my pride and just go through with it? Or would you like me to depart Netflix for 1 week and talk about what's going on over on Hulu? Because MODOK premiered on Hulu, and MODOK is apparently serious business, so I made the poll over on my Twitter, which, by the way, you can follow me on Twitter, at Tommy Teal Hat. And it's official. You guys really wanted me to see MODOK. I think it was like 3 votes to 1. So, yeah. This week we're going to talk about MODOK over on Hulu. I don't have a title card, so we're just gonna... The one thing I have noticed in recent years is that a very popular trend is taking villains, the most evil ne'er-do-wells you can find, and somehow making them sympathetic and relatable, and making them human, perhaps making them a woman of a strong and independent variety in one case or two, but all the same, adding dimension where there was no dimension before. And some would argue that they didn't need dimension, whereas others would say, shut up, asshole, and let me enjoy the show. It's been going on for a while now. I think it might have been happening either since Maleficent or Wicked came out. It's definitely one of those two. But I've noticed that it's been kind of building up in popularity, and we've been seeing other shows like Harley Quinn and other upcoming movies like Cruella. And as of now, we have another entry in this fad, MODOK. If you've never heard of MODOK, I won't judge you. I practically forgot the guy existed myself. I'll be the first to admit I'm not really much of a comic books guy, and I really didn't pay a whole lot of attention to Marvel or DC or even Image. I just kind of picked out the heroes I liked and followed them back when I could see well enough to do comic books. But MODOK is definitely one of the ones I'm not especially familiar with outside the fact that he's one of Iron Man's villains. MODOK, the series, is basically another entry in the, hey, let's take an obscure or otherwise like second banana caliber villain and give him a more human trait. Like, yeah, he wants to destroy Iron Man, but like outside of that vendetta, he's just a normal guy like you and me with a family and friends, and he has goals and he has aspirations. I watched about 5 episodes of this show, and I'm going to be honest with you, I actually liked it quite a bit. When it was called Harley Quinn and was on HBO Max. Seriously, I don't know if these two shows are made by the same company, but when I'm watching MODOK, the first thing I thought immediately was, this is Harley Quinn. This is Marvel's answer to Harley Quinn. That's pretty much all that is. And Whether or not that's a good thing is entirely up to you. Everything about this show just screams imitator, you know, right from the breakneck speed that the show moves at, to the fact that everybody is a complete and total moron and spewing catchphrases and has their own, like, idiotic, neurotic quirk about them. Just everything about this show just reminds me so much of Harley Quinn, except not as good. I'm no DC fanboy by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I will even go as far as to say that Harley Quinn has its own faults and its own problems that really need to be addressed here and there, but compared to MODOK, it's very few and far in between. Not to mention the more psychotically fast-paced and all-over-the-place frenetic nature fits a show like that a lot better because it's from the perspective of Harley Quinn, and Harley Quinn is fucking crazy. MODOK, I don't know, man. I don't really know much about MODOK, but I feel like this really doesn't work for MODOK all that much. Maybe if it was like a Deadpool cartoon it would work fine, but I don't know. I know on Twitter I kind of made the remark that I was afraid this was going to be like a super sanitized version on top of being a knockoff, but that's not the case. There's plenty of swearing, there's plenty of death, there's plenty of, like, dark humor here and there. Currently I'm halfway into the show, which admittedly is a lot further in than I usually get with shows like this, but while I wouldn't say that I hate this show, I'm also kind of hesitant to admit that I like the show per se, you know. MODOK is voiced by Patton Oswalt in this series, which I definitely consider a plus. Patton Oswalt is like one of my favorite comedians from like back when I was in like high school and college. He's also one of the few comedians from that era that hasn't been canceled or died yet. But even then, I'm not entirely sure Patton Oswalt could save this show. It's... Overall, it's okay. I mean, I didn't hate my time with it. I didn't like my time with it. Persuade me and I might actually finish the show because I might, you know, it's not terrible, but honestly, I'm not feeling a whole lot of incentive to give the show a second glance after this. That's why I am giving MODOK 2 hats out of 4.